Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporters Sal Capaccio and film room guru Eric Turner deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Eric's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape, presented by Thin Man Brewery. I'm your host, Eric Turner, and as always, joined by my man, Sal Capaccio from WGR. Sal, good morning, brother.
Good morning to you. I mean, it's finally here, right? We started down this journey several months ago, you and I, and of course that coincided with just thinking about football and getting all to this point. And here we are. I mean, we are just over 24 hours away, I guess, from the start of NFL season on a Sunday, and then of course Sunday Night Football with the Bills and Ravens. Good to be with you.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited. I'm ready. I don't like primetime games. I don't like waiting all day. Like, it's fun to watch other games and get informed that way, but I do not like waiting for the night games, especially, Sunday night late. I had to take off basically for Monday. Like, I'm not going to work Monday, being up late Sunday night. I'm usually in bed by 9 o'clock. So that's kind of, where I stand on that. But what a great matchup for week one. And week one is always kind of wonky. Everyone knows that for whatever reason. There's not much film. You're trying, the teams are trying to watch and scout off of old matchups from last year and years before and what to expect. But more times than not, a lot of the changes in the game as the game unfolds happens on the field from the coaching staff and things like that. So the Ravens, week one in Buffalo, in Orchard Park, they're a unique team. You have Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Kyle Hamilton, unicorns really at their positions in many ways. Josh Allen said this week that Lamar is one of the best players to ever touch a grass, honestly. He's unique. There are several players on this team that are unique. But overall, this system on offense and defense is unique as well. So talk about the Ravens style, how they match up with the Bills, and how they can really take over a game and quiet that crowd.
Yeah, unique is a great word to use because you don't find, and I had Sean McDermott on my weekly radio show yesterday for his Friday appearance, and that's what I asked him, like, how unique is it in all your time coaching? You go back to all your time at Philly and Carolina, here in Buffalo, to see a team that can do so much both in the run game and the pass game, right? It's one thing to have like a really great running back and a guy who can step in the pocket and just sling it all over the place. And we've seen that. But this is a team that can beat you in so many ways because they have such a unicorn at quarterback, just like the Bills do in Lamar Jackson. He can throw the ball. I have no time anymore, Eric, for anyone who tells me about Lamar Jackson as a passer. Yeah. He can't be. He's an amazing passer. Yeah. He's an amazing passer. He really is. Does he make a mistake once in a while? Sure. A lot of quarterbacks do. But he's incredible throwing the football. And, of course, we know what he can do running the football. But then you add in the fact that he's got King Henry with him, right? And what they can do in the run game. And then their personnel usage. They're a very, very smart coaching staff, by the way, the Ravens. That's one thing about them. They're very smart. John Harbaugh, he's been there a long time, and he's seen everything in this league. I love the fact that he became a head coach after being a special teams coordinator. A lot like Marv Levy, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing about that, for people to understand is a lot of times special teams coordinators are kind of the better candidates for head coaching jobs because they deal with the whole roster while they're a coordinator. An offensive coordinator deals with only the offensive players. The defensive coordinator deals with the defensive players. Special teams coordinator has to have his hand in every little bit on a roster, and they see the big picture. And I'm just always a champion for like special teams coordinators being able to, have that due. And I'm really glad to see that with a guy like John Harbaugh.
Yeah, it's a great point. The special teams coordinator is, like you said, has his hands in every positional room because all the different players from different positions are going to play on special teams. And in many ways, he's kind of handcuffed. He's kind of like, he's got to take all these players that are given to him that aren't starters necessarily and make it work and problem solve. And then again, now you have the rules changing. I think special teams could be a huge piece, piece of this game when it comes to the new rules, but also with the injuries to the Bills in Tyler Bass.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, thanks for the comment, CB. Pretending Lamar has no deficiencies is just incorrect. I didn't say he didn't have deficiencies.
Right.
Somebody said to me one time, it's a great point. Somebody said to me, remember, Sal, if you say how much you like apples, somebody will complain that you said you hate oranges, right? I mean, I didn't say that. Yes, of course. I'm telling you, though, he's an amazing passer to go along with being a great dynamic runner. But he certainly has made mistakes. And, there are times where the game kind of gets away from him a little bit, and that's been the downfall of the Baltimore Ravens in these playoff games. So anyway, to go back to injuries, and here's the other part about this, which is there are so many changes in special teams to both teams in this game. The Ravens no longer have Justin Tucker. They have a kid named Tyler Loop they drafted. This is his first ever NFL game. He comes from Arizona. He was a 6th round pick. He'll be kicking inside Highmark Stadium on Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, right? I mean, what a pressure spot for him to be in on national television. The Bills, they get an injury to Tyler Bass. Now, he had not kicked at all in most of the preseason until the final week, and then all of a sudden he shows up on the injury report again. He's been placed on IR. So presumably tomorrow, they haven't made the official move to elevate him or assign him, but it will happen. Matt Prater is going to be the Bills kicker. Matt Prater is 41 years old. He's been in this league 18 years. So it's completely opposite end of the spectrum, Eric, right?
Yeah.
Rookie in his first game, you got this 18-year vet where the Bills go, let's just, make sure that we're steady here and everybody, so we have somebody who knows what he's doing. Then you have new kickoff rules where who knows how every team's going to treat this. I think you're going to see a lot more returns. And then let's not forget, the Bills have a new special teams coordinator in Chris Tabor. It's a guy that's in Carolina. He was in Chicago. He was in Cleveland. And he is a guy that's very, very well respected. I'll tell you a quick story. I was at the Combine back in that would be February last year. It was right after Chris Tabor got hired. And I'm walking and I was hanging out with the Houston Texans coaches and broadcasters, I'm sorry. And we ran into the Houston Texans special teams coach. And I forget his name right now, but younger guy, you see the guy that his player pushed him on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Right. And he said to me, he goes, "Oh my God." I said, "Hey, I'm Sal Capaccio with the Buffalo Bills radio." He goes, "Oh my God, you guys got Tabes. Tabes amazing." Like his just started right away, immediately.
Right.
Like you could see the reverence right away this guy had for him, right? He's like, "Tabes is amazing. You guys are going to really love him in Buffalo. He's going to do a great job." And ever since I went to owners meetings, I heard a lot about him. And the Bills have given up, Eric, a special teams touchdown in 3 of the last 4 season openers.
Break the curse.
I mean, you can't let that happen. Right? Block punt return against the Steelers in 21, punt return overtime against the Jets in 23, and then kickoff return last year against Arizona in 24. Yeah. So this will be a game where special teams will matter a lot.
You talked about the crowd. Obviously, it's going to be ruckus. It's going to be a crazy crowd there at Highmark. And so I want to get your scoop from the sideline and how difficult that can be for not just the away team, but the home team, and how difficult communication can be, how important nonverbal signals between defenders on the Bills defense as Baltimore Ravens will be on offense. I mean, last year, Baltimore had 4 pre-snap penalties in the last 2 games against Buffalo, both in the divisional round games. It's going to be a factor. The crowd's going to be a factor, but it's not just a factor for the away team. It is also a factor for the Bills defense when they're on the field.
Do you remember the COVID year 2020? They come to the stadium and it sounded like there were 70,000. They had a false start near the end zone there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even that crowd was pretty amazing. You're right. I've talked with Bills safeties about this over the years, and mostly Micah and Jordan, but Taylor Rapp and guys like that. I've talked with them about this very issue, which I say issue, but they said they wouldn't have it any other way, right? Which is when the crowd is as loud as it is, and you're making it hard on the offense, you're also making it hard on your defense, the Bills defense, to communicate. And they always say the same thing you just did: nonverbal communication. You have to be able to have hand signals. You have to be able to talk to people like that. And it is a challenge. But look, the Bills, they practice like this. They turn up the volume. If you ever watch the videos of us at practice, me and other people who are out there, maybe you might hear sometimes this, but a lot of times we can't film that portion. So maybe you don't, but just to give everybody an idea, there are these big, if you go to training camp, you'll hear it, right? Everybody does. And you hear these big speakers, like DJ Milk's got the speakers, right? And they just pump in this crowd noise. That's to get them ready for the feel of having to do that. So they're prepared for it, but it is very, very key. And I think when you have Micah and Jordan, it makes it so much easier. They've been together for so long. That's one of the issues with having, when Sean talks about communication and time on task with Bishop and Rapp, getting that communication piece down when you can't actually communicate.
Right. And I ask you that because on defense, there's been some injuries. Christian Benford was limited early in the week. Then he went full, no injury designation for this game. So he's probably good to go. But the big news is Trey White not practicing all week, doubtful for this game with that groin injury. Now, 2-part question. That communication with a guy like Cole Bishop on the back end and Taylor Rapp, They haven't played a lot together. They're still kind of working some of the kinks out, especially if you're talking this year. But then also, who's going to start at cornerback too? I'm going to get your thoughts on who you think is going to start there, and weaving in that conversation of communication and signals and how important that's going to be when the Bills defense is on the field.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, thanks to our producer, Colin Ritchie, who says Frank Ross is the guy who's the special teams coordinator of the Texans. Yes,
good pull.
That's him. He was a really good guy too, to talk to a little bit. So I'll go back maybe 3 weeks ago when this all started with Tre'Davious White not knowing if he's going to be available and all that. And Matt Bove and I on our Always Game Day, Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast had a good debate, and we would say who we thought would start. And originally my first thought was, look, even if he doesn't make the team, which I didn't think he would make the team, I think Dane Jackson would have a chance to be elevated to actually start because he'd be a veteran and you could put him in there. I think since everything's happened and the way things have played out and watching practices and hearing coaches talk, I'm not on that anymore. I do think Dane could get elevated by 4 p.m. today to be insurance, right? Sure. I do think that could happen. I don't think that he would be in line to start. So that brings you to Dorian Strong, Jamarcus Ingram. And that's been a good debate. And Matt's always said he believes that they really like Dorian Strong and he would be the starter. I believe that Jamarcus Ingram will probably be the guy they'd be more comfortable with. But if you really want Jamarcus to be able to do what he needs to do, play dime safety, play nickel corner, then you can't really pigeonhole him on the outside. Whereas you can say to Dorian Strong, hey, kid, you're playing right there and you just do this. That's it. It makes it so much easier on a rookie, especially everything we just talked about, the communication and all that, right, Eric, where you don't put a lot on his plate and you're the starting corner. You go out there and play. So at this point, I'm going to lean that way and say, I think it's going to be Dorian Strong, but I wouldn't be stunned to see Jamarcus Ingram. I think they like having Jamarcus available for all those different roles he can play. Right. It's the same thing we used to say about Alec Anderson. And before that, Ryan Bates was a big one for this, which is Ryan Bates was so good at everything that it hurt him to be a starter, actually.
That's where I was going with the conversation, because I remember talking to Eric Wood years ago about Ryan Bates and his versatility. And Eric Wood said, sometimes having that ability to play multiple positions and have that positional flexibility actually hurts you 100%. As a starter. And so I could completely agree with it. I would not be shocked if Ingram started outside because he's done it before and he's admirable. He knows the defense really well. But at the same time, he is so important, similar to Cam Lewis, that can play multiple positions, that if someone does go down at either of those positions in the back end, those guys can kind of fill in. And so let's talk about Dorian Strong. If he is the starter, what will be his main challenge, the defense's main challenge when you're talking stopping the Ravens in your mind?
Okay, now listen, I know this is a pun to say it, but it's true. Dorian Strong is a strong player. He really is. I mean, we were joking on WGR. Mike Shope said, you can't have that last name Strong and not be strong, right? It's just one of those things in life you have to be. I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but little factoid for you. Dorian Strong's father is a professional weightlifter and bodybuilder.
Yes.
Okay. So the man knows his way around a weight room. He knows, what it takes to kind of play at this high level with play strength. And he looks the part too. Like when you stand next to him, Eric, he's a little slight. He'll get bigger, right, guys? They get bigger in the league. But he looks the part. He's longer. You could tell he's a little thicker, right? But he'll get bigger. He's not short. He's a taller guy, not super tall. So I think he's got exactly like what you want from an NFL cornerback build. But his challenge in this game is going to be to trust what he sees.
Yes.
I think that's the challenge with every young player playing against this defense. This offense, excuse me. Trust what you see. I think that goes to the defensive line as well. We can get into the rookies, but I think at this spot, when you look in the backfield and you see Lamar, whether he takes it, he pulls it out or not, even if you're a corner, you got to make a decision. Are you attacking the edge and going and, trying to make sure that you contain him, or are you staying where you are supposed to be? I'm interested to see, do the Bills play man-to-man with him? Do they play zone with him? How much of that do they do, considering if you're in a zone, hey, just keep everything in front of you. Don't worry. And then when the time comes, you're playing man, don't worry about him. Don't worry about Lamar Jackson. Just go with your guy, right? But that could leave windows, as we know, for him to run. So I think that's the biggest challenge for him, is trusting what he sees. And the Ravens will test him. If it's Dorian Strong, the Ravens, even if it's Jamarcus, if the Ravens are going to challenge him.
Great points on the run and pass game. So Strong, if he's the starter, he's got a lot of experience in college. He played a lot of college football, and over the course of his career, over 1,400 coverage snaps, 1,300 of those were in press coverage. And so when you play a team like the Ravens, as you just alluded to, you want to play man because you want to make sure that everybody has someone, not just because of the pass game, but the run game, especially the quarterback run game. You want to assign everyone a guy. Hey, this is your guy. Worry about that in the same way that you talk about man coverage when you're talking the passing game. I mean, Dorian Strong played man coverage in college his last year, 34% of the time. So this is one of those matchups. If you look back to last year in the playoffs, the Bills played more man coverage than usual, and they ran a lot of blitzes. And a lot of those were run blitzes to not only account for gaps, but account for runners as well, including the quarterback. And so Strong, it's going to be interesting. If he plays, he's used to playing press. He's used to playing man. The issue he had this preseason, though, wasn't necessarily the communication or the game being too big. It was actually his run defense, his ability to come up and make tackles. He was a little hesitant at times, and the balls would get outside of him, and he would miss tackles. And so that inconsistency does worry me. But I do think if he does play, I think he's got, like you said, he's got the DNA. He's played a lot of games. He's played in a lot of these scheme and techniques that he's going to be using, I think, in this game against the Ravens. So I'm not too worried about him starting this game Sunday night if it were to be him over Ingram.
You know what I like about him? When you talk about college, he stayed 5 years at one school.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm looking back at my notes. Yeah, exactly. I have 52 games for him.
Yeah,
at Virginia Tech. So he's played in a lot of games.
He played all 5 years, by the way, too. I mean, he started right away. I'm looking right now. 11 games his freshman year, 12 games by his fifth year, senior year. He had a bit of an injury, I believe, in 2022. But you don't see guys staying with one school 4 years anymore, much less 5, with the way the rules work. And honestly, like I just think Dorian Strong was able to really kind of get into that system and learn it and understand it. And I think it just kind of speaks to what he'll be able to kind of do with transitioning to the NFL and doing the same thing.
So let's talk about some injuries for the Ravens. Patrick Ricard, fullback, do-it-all type guy. He's almost like an extra offensive lineman on the field, but they move him around. He's out. Tight end Isaiah Likely is out. Those are two really big injuries for the Ravens. I want to start with Ricard because he's kind of been the personnel player that dictates what type of game the Ravens are going to play against the Bills. Mm-hmm. In the last 2 games against the Bills with Ricard in the lineup, they ran outside zone over 14 attempts a game. They average 113 yards a game and 7.7 yards per rush, with him usually at the point of attack in some capacity. Even more so, if you look at when he's the lead blocker, say they're in I formation or strong I formation, 14 attempts a game, 80.5 yards a game, 5.8 yards per rush. So that injury to Ricard, first of all, is pretty big. But it's not just the plays that they can run with him, but it's also dictating personnel. And usually when Ricard's on the field, it's usually 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and it's usually 22 personnel, which they ran a bunch, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. They want to play that heavy personnel, smash mouth football, which means that usually Karen Johnson would be pulled off the field and then that third linebacker would be on. So talk about those injuries and how that's going to affect the overall look at this game.
I love that you brought it up from that side because I think it's such a chess match and how it impacts what the Bills do, right? Which is what you're alluding to and saying. The Ravens have what they want to do, but truly dictates the Bills will be dictated by what the Ravens do, right? They're going to say, and we know this from past history. Let's look back at the playoff game last year. I think the Ravens ran 59, I believe. Had the numbers before. 59 offensive plays in that playoff game. Mm-hmm. Patrick Ricard was not on the field for 25 of them. You know who was on the field in those 25? Basically, Taron Johnson. Like it was like literally, I think there was only 2 plays. Like it only matched up. The math was very, very close to how many times Patrick Ricard was on where Taron Johnson was off. So what happens is the way it works from the sidelines, and Eric, you know this, but I'll let everybody know. You see, first of all, there's a guy on the Bills staff, and it's actually he's their team chaplain as well. He carries multiple roles, right? Yeah. And he holds up a big sign, these yellow cards. You guys, if you see him on the field, you see people holding up 12, 11, and these numbers. That is telling his own defense. The Bills are telling their own defense what personnel is coming into the game for the Ravens. He's watching the Ravens sideline. He's watching people come in, and he knows who's a tight end, who's a running back, and all that. So he puts up a sign. So if he says 12, that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, right? And we know that. And then we know it's 3 wide receivers because or 2 wide receivers. So you have 5 eligible guys every time. So you could just do the math. So once you see that, the Bills know how to counter. And they say, oh, when it's that personnel, I'm in. And what the Bills have done against the Ravens, and they did this in the playoff game, was When they see Patrick Ricard coming on the field and they go to, let's say, 12 or 22, Taron Johnson runs off the field, another linebacker comes on.
Right.
What I'm fascinated by in this game, is that going to be Dorian Williams? Is that going to be Shaq Thompson?
Yes.
I think it could be Shaq Thompson.
Right.
I could be Dorian Williams. I want to know what I think Shaq Thompson has a role. I think his role could very well be in this game. I think he has a role this year. He is a guy that's very versatile. He can play every linebacker spot. He can play Mike. He can play Will. He can play strong side Sam. And he can do all that. He's kind of he's a big nickel, right? Is what he is. He was in the league with Sean McDermott, like a safety linebacker type. At this point in his career, he's probably less safety and more linebacker. But I wonder if it's going to be him. And what you're saying, and I agree with 100%, is that may be mitigated a lot by the Ravens' inability to go to that personnel because they don't have Ricard. Now they do have a fullback. I'm expecting Lucas Scott. I believe his name. I want to go right. Is that Lucas Scott? Is his name?
Lucas Scott.
I'm expecting Lucas Scott, a fullback from Army, to be elevated to the active roster before 4 p.m. today. He's also close to 300 pounds playing fullback. And they could just say, we're doing the same thing. We just have a different guy. It's next man up. They could do that. Or they could say, we can't do it as much because you don't have Patrick Ricard. But I think, Eric, more than anything, is maybe Ricard plus likely in how much that impacts this game. It's not just Ricard. It's Ricard plus likely, which really impacts what they want to do there.
Koala Bear says fullbacks matter. Yes.
Ricard's
out.
They do here. That's for sure.
Lucas Scott is 6'3". He's in that 300-pound range, plus or minus that. So in the preseason, they used him in 71 snaps, and 61 of those were as a run blocker. So a little tendency there. So I think not having Ricard in this game is going to handcuff them personnel-wise a little bit. But I do think they will try to mitigate some of that with Scott when they want to run the ball, when they want to, again, get to that heavy personnel and run downhill. But likely is also a big one because off of those plays that you run, you're running a lot of play action. You're running a lot of crossers in that second level. And usually, it was likely on some deep sail routes, some deep crossers versus the Bills linebackers over the last couple of years. And he was exploiting that area. So not having him really affects the play action game and really getting to that intermediate level. Yeah,
for sure. Likely is a guy they like to get out in space to block.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like he's kind of a really kind of one of these new age tight ends that, obviously can be a matchup guy, but it's not like he does it all the time. He can put his hand on the ground. He can down block, but his game is getting out in space and blocking too, Eric, like they like to do that with him. And the way they're just so unique. Like you said, they present so many challenges. Yeah. You could be a safety watching Isaiah Likely and like, boy, you're reading a down block. Bam, there he goes. Right. Mm-hmm. He's out the back door. Or you could be watching him and all of a sudden he pulls to the outside and, he bubbles out and he's a lead blocker and a sweep. So, Ricard, they bring him in a lot for those short yardage situations. It could be Lucas Scott. What's really interesting to me is if you go back and watch the game against the Ravens in the playoffs, Lamar didn't run much. No. They didn't take it out of the belly. I remember being on the field, Eric, and going, boy, if Lamar pulls that, he might have more. But he never pulled it. He only ran like 2 designed runs. I think their other 4 were scrambles for the 6 he was credited for. So I'm wondering, if that's going to be more a part of their game plan as well.
It could. It very well could. Obviously, it was, the defense's game plan from the Bills to slow that down, which it is each and every week. And I think one guy that could be make a major impact in this game from that perspective is linebacker Matt Milano. And he is our preemptive tapped in player for this matchup against the Ravens. I think him, he's looked great this preseason. He's looked great in training camp. I think his ability to match up as against tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, rush the passer, make those impact plays. He's going to have to flash, create those negative plays and takeaways in those big moments. And I think the matchup I'm watching with Milano for this tapped in segment is versus Justice Hill. Again, they have so many different curveballs to throw at the Bills. And one guy that has eaten against the Bills when there's those 3 linebacker sets, especially if you're talking about going against Dorian Williams in the pass game, is Justice Hill. 8 receptions on 8 targets, which is first against the Bills over the last couple of games. 85 yards, 1 touchdown, 9.4 yards after contact per reception, 5 first downs, 19.2% first downs per route since 2023. He is a curveball that they can throw out there, but the Bills have their curveball back, hopefully, in Matt Milano. And we hope that he could mitigate and prevent some of these big plays to Justice Hill, where he's the type of guy that could come out of the backfield on a check down, take that to the house. And so talk about Matt Milano, how he's looked, and how important he is to this defense, as we all know.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out MPS, who says, not to be off topic, he signed up for the cruise. Way to go, baby. We got to get Eric and Colin on the cruise coming up in May. Buffalo Football Legends cruise. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Matt Milano, I think that we saw the difference, right? And now, granted, it was not just Milano. It was Milano, Bernard, and Taron Johnson. So I'm not saying it's just Matt Milano here. But when the Bills didn't have those guys and didn't have him, in Baltimore last year on Sunday Night Football, right? Look what happened to the defense in that game. And he was a big part of it. And I say that because look at the difference he made in the actual game in the playoffs. He was the guy that batted the 2-point conversion down, the first one, if you remember that, right? And just read it really great. He's so athletic. He was the spy, Eric, on Lamar Jackson for a lot of the game. If you watch the game and just watch the replay, you'll see Matt Milano just standing there, mirroring him. He's mirroring him.
Yep.
And then he goes to where Lamar goes. And actually at the very end of the game, last drive, Milano, he runs towards the sidelines where Lamar is, and then you don't see him on the field anymore after that. And that's because he kind of tweaked his hamstring in that play. And he wasn't completely 100% against Kansas City because of it, but he wasn't on the field for the last several plays after the Ravens scored and even the 2-point conversion because he was the one mirroring Lamar Jackson and going after him. Remember, he did it the week before against Bo Nix, and he had him. He corralled him on a sack when Bo Nix got out of the pocket. You're like,
I love that package with him as a spy. The odd mirror where they use 3 defensive linemen. He's the 4th guy. We'll call it an aggressive spy. Where as soon as that quarterback leaves that tackle box, he's coming downhill and triggering. It's a perfect role for him.
No doubt. And you ask how he's looked. I just think he's looked as good as I've seen him look in a long time. Because, last year coming back from the previous year's injury, he was starting to ramp up and look really good. And then all of a sudden he has the biceps injury. Comes back last year at the end of the year after the biceps injury. And he started to really you could see him getting on that trajectory. That game against Baltimore was a really good game. And you wish you would have had him a fully 100% against Kansas City. But it wasn't the case. And I just think that he's had such a really, really great preseason in camp. I'm really excited to see Matt Milano play this year. You got to keep him healthy. I think with the new defensive line, the bigger guys they have, if they can keep, bodies off of Milano and Terrell Bernard, I just think that'll be a big benefit to both them to be able to do their job. But a healthy Matt Milano playing fast and free is an unbelievable difference. And that is no disrespect to Dorian Williams, who led the team in tackles last year. You did an incredible, great breakdown on the difference between Milano and Williams last year. And I loved it. And I always reference to people like Dorian Williams plays really fast, sometimes too fast, right? And the reason is because Matt Milano sees something and he knows it and he sees it and he trusts it. He's so good at dissecting that he gets there, that he makes up for everything by what he sees and he's able to get there so quickly. Dorian Williams, he might react a tick slow sometimes, or he might react a little bit too fast because he's processing things a little bit differently than Matt Milano does. And that just comes with reps and time. But Matt is one of the best that I've seen at in this league in a long time.
You're right. They are, different players, and Dorian, he's a hammer too. When he comes downhill and he triggers, he brings his pads behind him. But Milano's just so much better in space right now in his career. And that's why I think your point about whether it's going to be Thompson, Shaq Thompson, or Dorian as a third linebacker is interesting against this team because of the experience of Thompson and how he's used to playing in space. And he's used to going after the quarterback if needed. He was kind of the Matt Milano of that Carolina Panthers team years ago. And so it's going to be fun to watch Milano playing out there, playing free, like you said. Hopefully the Bills' defensive front can go get the quarterback, go stop the run game, and free up Milano to play in space, to match up versus some of those Ravens skill players when it comes to not just the run game, but also the pass game. But he's going to be our tapped-in player presented by Thin Man Brewery for this game against the Ravens. Big things are brewing at Thin Man. The fan favorite Pils Mafia is getting a bold rebrand, and it's bringing back up this year with Mafia Light, Pils Mafia Light. In tomorrow night, you guys should be drinking this beer from them. It's the new Tailgate Essential. It hits different with 3.5% ABV and only 80 calories per 12-ounce can. And it drinks like water and with notes of beer. So go ahead and pick some of this up before the game tomorrow. But drink responsibly, obviously, guys. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. And I know that as fans, we're not always patient. But be safe out there at the game tomorrow night. So with that said, let's flip the script. Sal, let's go to the offensive side of the ball. I want to get some of your thoughts on the Bills offense and how they plan to control the tempo against the Ravens is we know it's going to be a slugfest. It's going to be a physical game. The Bills in the last couple of matchups have went to that power game and, with guys like James Cook, which is surprising, especially considering, his build, but 46 rushes with the power concept. So backside guard pulling 4.3 yards per attempt, but 2.41 yards before contact from teams playing the Ravens last year. Well, the Bills, they took that and they're like, okay, we're going to run that same concept. And they got 6.4 yards per attempt against the Ravens the last couple of games, 4.71 yards before contact, really showing how effective the Bills offensive line was at displacing the Ravens defensive front when they run those power plays. So talk about, will the Bills ride Cook, when it comes to the run game and controlling the tempo? Are they going to see all three backs in this game against the Ravens?
Well, I think you're going to see all three backs. Let's remember it's a marathon, not a sprint. The Bills know that, you can't, James Cook isn't going to be able to handle the full load all year. And, especially in one game. And, he's not that kind of running back. They don't want to do that. A guy that knows a little bit about playing football. I have to ask in the chat box. I'm just curious. Daryl Spencer Jr. is in the chat box. He just reposted. Is this the same Daryl Spencer Jr., 2023 inductee into the Cleveland Hill High School Hall of Fame as one of the best hurdlers in New York State and over the last 20 years? I have to ask because I'm a Cleve Hill guy. I saw Daryl's name in here. There it is. Look at that. Cleve Hill Eagles right there. All right, Daryl, go Eagles. Love our Eagles. I see you in the chat box. Much love. I always got to give some love to our Cleve Hill.
You got to, right? Yeah.
Great athlete, great quarterback, great hurdler, Daryl. Thank you for coming in. Went on to play some college football. All right, so I would say they are going to use all three running backs. The Bills have, to me, like the perfect kind of setup of what they've always wanted. Now, not necessarily the perfect setup that every team should be look just like the Bills. What I mean is Brandon Beane said something really interesting last year, Eric, right before the season started. We had him on the pregame radio interview. He's with Chris Brown.
Yeah.
And Chris asked him a question, something like what position group has really, stood out to you? And he said, I think we really have the running back room where we want it now. And he said, it's really good. And what he meant by that was they have somebody for everything. They have James Cook, who's kind of your workhorse, but not in the sense of, getting 30 touches a game, but that's your main guy, your number one guy. He can play on first and second down. He can catch the ball to the backfield on third down. You have a really nice backup in Ray Davis and go in there. He can add a little power element.
Yeah.
He can do everything that James does, maybe to a little lesser degree athletically. Right. And then you have, of course, Ty Johnson, who Josh Allen says the best third down back in the league. Mm-hmm. He can pass block. He can catch passes. I think that's the model for the Bills. In this game, the key for me, stay out of third and long, because then you can keep James Cook on the field a little bit more. And it doesn't mean you have to give him the ball all the time on first and second down. If you stay out of third and long, you get the third and short, you get the second and intermediate. Mm-hmm. You could throw the ball to James out of the backfield. Now you can present the defense with so many different looks. I think, though, Jackson Hawes is the key here. Jackson Hawes, Joe Brady told us this week down at One Bills Drive, Jackson Hawes was the best blocking tight end they ever evaluated.
That was quite the statement.
I mean, you think about that for a second. And I know how much reverence you have for Aaron Cromer. Mm-hmm. Aaron Cromer told Eric Wood. Eric relayed this on the broadcast a couple of weeks ago. Eric Cromer said that Jackson Hawes might be the best blocking tight end this early in his career that he's ever coached.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that for a second.
Yeah. Brady even added that he is the best blocking tight end he's ever evaluated, right? He added that as well. So
yes.
And you know what's great about that, Sal, is because normally, and we saw all of last year, the Bills ran a lot of those extra offensive lineman sets with Alec Anderson, number 70 here on your screen. And this is the last game against the Ravens in the playoffs last year. Bills were winning 27-25, fourth quarter, 1:32 on the clock, and the Bills sent out the extra offensive lineman. They had Dalton Kincaid on the right side there, and they ran that power concept I was just talking about. Again, average 6.4 yards per attempt. So the Ravens knew the ball was going to be run here. They knew what was coming. The personnel screwed them up so much so they were down a guy on this play. And as you talked about, the third running back, Johnson, was on the field, and he ripped off a 17-yard gain on this concept. And adding Hawes to this, personnel, you don't have to put Alec Anderson out there and really show your hand. Okay, run's coming, but also you can throw him in there where Kincaid is as well. And what they did on these plays is they really attacked the defensive ends and edge players for the Ravens where Kincaid made it look like he was going to block that guy. So he would, kind of come up with force, and then he would arc block to the next level. And then Gilliam was just wiping out that guy and creating that space. They got a 17-yard gain on this play late in the game. James Cook broke one for 11 earlier in the game. And so seeing these power concepts, whether you're talking from this personnel with the extra offensive lineman or this one, which was used in really third and fourth down situations, high leverage situations. This was a 4th and 2. They went all Ravens on against the Bills did. They
Right.
spread them out and then ran power or a backside pull from the tackle, but ran it with Josh Allen. So that'll be interesting to see hey, are they can condense the formations and run old school power, which worked last year, but also are they going to run Josh Allen like this? Because they ran this several times in high leverage situations in the playoffs last year. I'm not sure if they're going to bust this out quite early in week 1.
It'll be interesting to see how much they put on Josh first game of the year. Remember, Josh had to kind of be Superman in that second half of that Cardinals game last year. I don't think that was the plan going in necessarily, but it kind of had to become the plan because they were down 17-3. And if that's the case, then you have him put the cape on and you do that. But I think they'd rather prefer, him to not have to do that all the time, especially early the season. But who knows if they'll go to that. You're right about they go all Ravens on him. I'm watching. I'm looking at that graphic. I'm thinking about the Bills and what they can do with their tight ends. And yeah, the Bills can kind of be like the Ravens where they can throw out of power. They can throw out of heavy, I should say. They can throw out of these heavy sets.
Yeah.
We've talked about this for months, but what Jackson Hawes does is he allows them to run that 6th offensive lineman, essentially. It's what he is, but he can catch passes. So you can basically tell the defense, okay, we're going heavy. Defense says, well, we got to go base defense now. And then you now have Jackson Hawes who can run a little out pattern and beat a linebacker, and you get an easy 5 yards, something like that, right? And I think that I would expect to see that. I just talked about the running backs being like 3 different guys that can do different things. I think the tight ends are the same thing. Yeah. You have your blocking tight end in Jackson Hawes. You have your pass catching tight end in Dalton Kincaid, who they want to get mismatches on to get down the seam and mid range. And then you have your guy who does a little bit of everything. And, in Dawson Knox, who can block, who can catch. He doesn't do anything exceptional, but he does everything well. And I think that that's kind of also where they wanted to formulate their tight end room coming into the year.
Great point. We led the show off with how important Ricard is when it comes to matching personnel. Jackson Hawes, 6 offensive linemen. You're talking to Alec Anderson. That is one way that Joe Brady dictates the game and the tempo of the game. And so having a guy like Hawes that can come in there, do a lot of the things that the 6 offensive linemen can, it really presents personnel matchup issues to opposing defenses, which we could see very well play out in week 1. So another area when we're talking the pass game that Josh Allen has faced the Ravens the last couple of times is the ability for the Ravens to kind of stack the box. They played a lot of single high coverages over the last few matchups. I'm talking cover 1 and cover 3. The Bills and Josh Allen saw cover 1 25.7% over the last 2 games. They saw cover 3 34.3% of the time. So a lot of single high coverages, a lot of loaded boxes. And Allen has struggled overall against the Ravens, but in these situations with a single high safety, only a 51.3% completion percentage, 124 yards, 3.8 yards per attempt, and a negative 0.31 throw EPA. So when you see these single high coverages, Sal, there's a lot of one-on-ones outside the numbers that need to win. So I'm going to ask you, if the Bills see these type of coverages against the Ravens like we expect, who do you think is going to win on the outside for the Bills offense?
I think it's Josh Palmer time when I see this. That's what this screen. Isn't this why you signed Josh Palmer? Right? Yes. When you sign Josh Palmer, it's because he wins earlier in the route, right? That's what his job is. That's what he does. I think Khalil Shakir does this as well, and it could be him. Khalil Shakir would have been a much bigger factor in the game in Baltimore on Sunday night, but he got hurt early in the game.
Yeah.
And then he came back in. He played on like basically one leg. He gets behind the defense once in a busted play. But I think that's where you're looking here. I think you're looking at guys underneath, win off the line as quick as you can, get them a ball before the Ravens, oh my God, you think about the Ravens secondary, right? I mean, think about these names they have in the secondary. They have Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks, Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, Jair Alexander. You know what they all have in common? 5 first-round picks. Yeah. Right? I mean, come on, like these guys can all play. And so I think that Josh Palmer becomes a real interesting guy. But what the Bills really want to do is truly, I know it's a mantra, but it's true. It's everybody eats, right? It doesn't have to be one guy. It's where we can get matchups. And if that guy is open, But I do think Dalton Kincaid becomes a factor here because of what we said about the matchups and what we said about playing heavier personnel and tight ends and things like that. But to me, Josh Palmer is the guy immediately sticks out when I hear numbers like that, because this is the guy, this is why you signed him for that type of game.
I agree. I think it does have to be Palmer. Early in the week, it was a toss-up for me between Keon Coleman and Josh Palmer, just because, again, they're playing outside a bunch. Coleman actually, he flourished pretty well when given those 50-50 balls down the field against the Ravens over the last couple matchups. But Josh Palmer, EPA per target against cover 1 and cover 3 over the last few years. Listen to this, EPA per target. His ranking in the category, 2022, he's 17th. 2023, he is 20th. And last year, he was 17th. So as you said, this is why you got Josh Palmer to win outside the numbers, whether it's zone or man. And he can win in a multitude of ways. And Josh trusts him. Josh trusts the rhythm of his routes and for him to be open when the play develops. And so I could see him being a huge factor. Keon Coleman, I do, as long as he's healthy, because he, that groin flared up this week. And now his designation is he's cleared to good to go. If he has 2 catches, on 2 targets down the field for 40 to 50 yards, that's a win for the Bills offense. Yeah. That does just enough to keep the Ravens off balance.
So that's funny. 2 things. Number one, Pitzer, I'm putting it in here for their Colin. What is the word to tweak on Coleman? Is he okay? Something that is going to linger and hamper him? I don't think so. He said he's fine. I mean, even when he showed up on the injury report, Eric, like the other day, I saw him afterwards. He wasn't with trainers or anything. And that same day he was walking around and everything seemed fine. Then he's at practice. He's off the injury report as far as he's got a full designation. Sean McDermott said something interesting. This is where now you think about like how everything is such a trickle-down effect, domino effect. Sean McDermott said one of the reasons why he had the flare-up of the groin was he was taking more reps when other guys were down during camp. And, it was little, and that's when it first started.
Yeah, they were decimated. You're right. Yep.
That's right. So it's really interesting. Wait. You're talking about, So real quick. So last night, late at night, watching the game, I'm not going to reveal any names. I get a text from a national fantasy football guy. Okay. And he says to me, Sal, we are having a debate over here. Who leads the Bills in receiving this year? Okay. And I said, okay, I thought about it. And then he wrote, and please tell me why it's Keon Coleman or something like that, because he wanted me to say Coleman. And I said, I think at the end of the year, Shakir leads in receptions and yards, but Coleman has more touchdowns and bigger plays.
Yeah. And I think that's why they drafted him, to be honest. Shakir, we're talking cover 1, cover 3, just kind of bring it back to that. 83 receptions for the Bills. That's way higher than number 2. Number 2 was Kincaid with 58, and he had a 0.4 EPA per target, which was first for the Bills against cover 1, cover 3, and that's Khalil Shakir. So I'm with you. I do think overall, I think Shakir is the tempo. When the Bills, if they struggle to run the ball, they'll just spit it out there in some screens to Shakir, have him control and be an extension of the run game on those screens. And I think that'll play a part in a lot of the pressure looks that the Ravens are going to show. I think Shakir will be that outlet. And so Coleman, I do think that he's got to be that explosive guy. But someone's asking, is Palmer a blocker when not catching? I think he's an okay blocker. I do think Coleman shows more like a higher ceiling in that regard. And I think the Bills are going to use him like they use Matt Collins and a lot of those, interior runs, those duo runs where James Cook, heads to the line of scrimmage and bounces out wide. I think Coleman is going to be at the point of attack as a blocker in a lot of those situations, like you saw Matt Collins last year.
Remember last year in the Seattle game, he drove the guy into the bench area, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
He was just starting to ascend. He had that game. He had that catch over Tariq Woolen, and that's when he got hurt, like right after that, and he missed some time. He was really ascending as a physical presence and blocker, and Sean McDermott said so as well. And I think the thing with Palmer, to answer the question there from James, Josh Palmer isn't like the biggest dude. The thing about it, let me tell you about blocking as a wide receiver in the NFL. You just have to be willing. Right. You don't have to be great at it, but it's what it's called a stalk block. Eric knows, right? A stalk block is you mirror a guy, you get your arms locked. You don't have to be this physical force to be a blocker on the outside as a wide receiver in the NFL, but you have to be willing. You got to be willing to get in there, mirror a guy, stalk block him, get your hands on him. Because look, if you're factoring in on the outside as a blocker, that means the ball's already probably 3-4 yards down the field, which is a good thing, right? And you just want to make sure that you keep that guy at bay a little bit. So, and everything I know about Josh Palmer and I've seen him, I think Josh Palmer's a willing blocker. blocker, and he can do all that just fine. Is he going to be like this, some physical, beast blocking in the run game? No. I think that would be where Coleman could be a little bit more of a help when you can put him in that position, but you just have to be willing to be able to do it. And I think Josh Palmer, of course, is.
Yeah, he's a pro's pro. He knows all assets of the game and how important, a block from a wide receiver is to the run game, especially if you're talking those explosive runs. So with that said, I'm ready for this game. I don't know about you. I'm super ready for this game. It's going to be a fun matchup, but walk us through what, tomorrow looks like for you, for as a reporter being on the sideline. What does tomorrow look like for you before we get out of here?
Well, first thing is my son's got some fall baseball going on. So I'll get up in the morning. I'll go to, he's got a couple games. I'll go to the first one for as long as possible, but then I got to get down to the stadium early. It is a night game, so I don't have to be there as early as normal. Normally for a 1:00 game, I'm getting to the stadium about 8:00 in the morning to jump on the radio with the guys on the pregame show. But tomorrow I'll probably get there probably around, well, actually I have to go do Channel 4 tomorrow. Check it out. WIV Bills Kickoff Live. I'll be with the gang, Josh Reed, Thad Brown, Carl Jones, Matt Perino, Tim Graham. We'll be on Bills Kickoff Live. And then once after that, I'll get into the stadium and I start to kind of just get all my radio stuff ready, which is going on WGR and the pregame show. We have our countdown to kickoff, things like that. New this year, want to give a shout out, Eric. This game and some other games, not every game, this game, we're going to be outside the Bills store, big stage set up for WGR. Sweet. You can see us and say hi and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
We're going to be outside. Yeah. So people can take part in that. They can come say hi, and Jeremy and Joe will be out there doing their thing. I'll be joining them with Eric Wood and Chris Brown for the roundtable, by the way. That'll be out there, right? You can say hi to E. Wood, you can say hi to Chris Brown. And that'll be at 6:00. And then once 7:00 rolls around, I'll be back inside the stadium. I'll go down on the field. And that's where tomorrow is a real big key, Eric, to start watching warmups, right? One of my big jobs to watch warmups. Who's doing what? Who's not doing what? Look, how is Keon Coleman moving? What does Matt Prater look like? Yeah. How far? What is the line? Right? You can always watch coaches watch their field goal kickers. What's the line that they're talking about and where they can make field goals from, going this way or going that way? Mm-hmm. That's how it all works. It's really pretty interesting to kind of see. And I always encourage people, if you ever get a chance to go to an NFL game, if you haven't, go watch warmups. I just think it's the coolest thing to see how people are going through their process.
Yeah, it's important. It's intel. Like, it's intel for coaches. It's intel for the staff. It's intel for, players that are, slightly injured and they're getting worked out before, or they're not. There's a lot of context that you can lose if you don't go in there early to watch warmups. But listen, this is going to be a fun matchup. You guys, again, be safe, enjoy yourself. We appreciate all of you guys joining us live. And if you're watching later, leave us a comment, smash that like button, subscribe to both of our channels, Cover One Sports channel, also Sal's channel is blowing up right now too. So we're live on both, and we're going to be bringing you each and every week. We're going to be bringing you the film. We're going to bring, obviously, Sal on each and every week to have that angle from the press, the sidelines, and the media. It's, again, this is a unique show, and we want to bring both sides of the house per se, to you guys to add all of the context you need for your team, the Buffalo Bills and the NFL. So with that said, everyone, thank you very much. We can get all of us, all of our, shows on audio as well, all podcast platforms. And we're going to keep your eyes out and head on a swivel, because we don't know what day we're going to be going live next week, but we're going to fit it in there. We're going to make it work. We have tough schedules that we need to work around, but we will have you covered for the, the post-game review of this matchup in week one. Sal, anything else to say before we get out of here?
No, thanks a lot. Really appreciate everybody coming along. We're over, and what I can see is close to 3,000 live viewers this morning, 8 a.m. on a Saturday. That is dedication for everybody out there. Thank you so much. EB says, who's the ref? It is John Hussey. It is his crew. So do with that with what you want. And hey, I'll be talking to you all day tomorrow on WGR, and of course down on the field and on the sidelines. And if you're at the game, come down by the wall, say hi, and tell us you watch the show.
That's Sal Capaccio. I'm Eric Turner. This has been Turf to Tape, brought to you by Thin Man Brewery. We'll see you next week.